All right, Gabriella, round two of the podcast, and it's such an honor to have you back on. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I love being here. Looking
Good,
forward to it.
good. So we have a lot of things to talk about, based off of our pre-recording conversation. Um, so I guess let's start big.
Mhm.
What are you seeing in the world right now? You've been in the coaching, neuroscience, nervous system, all of the beautiful things that I love to talk about here on the podcast. You've been in the game for 20 years. You are this beautiful example in your personal life of an extraordinary woman. The beautiful embodiment of feminine beauty and energy, but also this balance of within yourself. I'm assuming this feminine and masculine co-creation you're creating in yourself. Um, but again, I kind of want to start big and maybe go into what it means for us as humans that are listening to this podcast. What are you seeing out there in the world today when it comes to co-creation, when it comes to maybe ills, I guess, in the world because they're everywhere, right? It's really hard to, before I got on this podcast, actually, my partner was like, we're talking about our Instagram feeds, and apparently Joe Rogan's Instagram feed is like full of really, really horrible stuff, and mine is full of puppies and roses. But, suffices to say, there's a lot of crazy stuff happening out there in the world right now. And how do you see that as a spiritual teacher, as a woman that takes women through their developmental processes inside of themselves? What do you see as an opportunity for healing from a bigger level?
I mean, I think on a very big level, just the recognition that we're in the midst of a few storms.
Mm,
A storm which is considered in the Vedic texts a Kali Yuga, which is the change of a 26,000 year cycle. So
mm,
again, a 26,000 year cycle of going through the karmic wheel of time and evolution on this planet. The wheel fully turns in 2025 next year. So there's this collective storm that's been written about in, holy text and scripture for thousands of years now that speak to this 26,000 year cycle ending. So something is dying and something
mm,
is born, and we are alive at that critical juncture of the breakdown as we are seeing everywhere around us. The amount of teenagers that are committing suicide right now, the devastation of the toxicity of our air, our water, our soil, and how there's a form of life going extinct every 20 minutes because of the
mm,
toxicity, the breakdown within the political structure, the breakdown. I mean, every system we look at, medicine, education, politics, there
mm,
is breakdown.
mm,
And we're seeing the breakdown manifesting through a phenomenal amount of distress. Depression is through the roof, anxiety is through the roof. As I mentioned, suicides, teens
mm,
and others is through the roof. And so the pain is everywhere. And also as with the sort of the magical powers of be that created life, the great creator of us all, did create equally when there's breakdown, there is breakthrough. Just
mm,
like it is dark, there is light.
mm,
And so while we're seeing the collapse of a lot of things that aren't working, we are also, you and I are coming together and we are surrounded by people that are waking up
mm,
to a vision inside of actually making a meaningful difference by using our gifts, by fulfilling a vision that we have in our heart to contribute to creating more beauty, more peace, more love, more harmony on this planet. So there's the meta sort of storm that we're in of the
mm,
breakdown through this Kali Yuga cycle. There's also the reality of how we're in a 2 year cycle right now on the planet astrologically, where it was the replication of what was happening on planet Earth during World War II, Nazi Germany, all of that. So we are entering into that. We entered into that February this year and will be for 2 years. So we're also facing a lot of conflict and
mm,
destruction, and things may be ramping up in these next few months, especially with the political climate in
mm,
this country
mm,
and with the war in Ukraine and so on and so forth. So more to speak to, there are larger forces at work,
mm,
universe, that are really guiding us to this birth canal,
mm.
to birth something new. And also, inside of that, we are coming out of a 2,500 year masculine dominant cycle, which we
Mhm.
call the patriarchy. So
Mhm.
we've got the 26,000 year Kali Yuga, the great turn of the karmic wheel, and 2,500-ish years of the patriarchy,
Mm.
where the feminine qualities and energies, because every single one of us walk with masculine qualities and feminine qualities, has been largely shut down, overridden,
Mhm.
suppressed,
Mhm.
and seen as less than. And so we're also looking at a massive shift of power on the planet right now
Mhm.
into women taking our rightful roles as co-equals with men, so we can actually come together to co-create a new way of being. So on the meta level, like we're all being challenged, and we're all being called to rise. And I believe the path of rising largely is looking towards the embracing of feminine energies. And when I say feminine energies, it's more, they live in all of us: compassion,
Mhm.
tenderness,
Mhm.
caring,
Mhm.
awareness of impact on the whole.
Mhm.
Our sense of being in relationship with
Mhm.
ourselves, with one another, with the planet. And so this, like our humanity, we've lost our humanity, and
Mhm.
we are finding our way back into our humanity, that which
Mhm.
makes us most human, which is our tenderness and our kindness and the fierceness of our loving.
Mm.
There's, so that's like on a meta level,
Mhm.
there's a lot that's happening.
Yeah. You know what I find so interesting about this? So, well, first of all, thank you for your expertise on the cosmic things because that's definitely not my forte, but I definitely feel that shit for sure. Um, so this idea of breaking down and breaking through, and the femininity of using our gifts, which I have completely noticed the transformation inside of myself in particular of making those it's those gifts for me were unsafe at one point in time in my life, right? So the healing for me is making them safe again inside of myself, and then all parts of me were able to accept my gifts.
Mhm.
What's like, and you and I are probably in these circles where this type of language is common. People that are listening to this podcast, I know, are on deep personal development journeys because they've been with me for forever, or they're just jumping in. Um, and what why it's just so scary. I think it's so daunting, when we have all of these things forced in our face, and the news and social media, and even, maybe our friends and our colleagues, and the fear is just really rampant. And I understand this idea of becoming compassion and tenderness and love because I've done that myself. But
Mhm.
what do you think is stopping the co-creation, like that you're talking about, of this balance of the scales, I guess you could say, or this breakthrough? What's stopping this breakthrough
Yeah.
from
I
happening?
mean, I'm so moved by what you're saying because the fear is real. Like it's
Mhm.
not imagined. And certainly there are ways that it is imagined. But knowing that we have been in a hierarchical power structure of power over, he who has the
Wow.
most money, who has the most toys, who has the most influence wins.
Mhm.
And and this patriarchal worldview that we have sort of we've all been drinking the Kool-Aid of that because
Mhm.
it's the air that we breathe, it's the
Mhm.
water that we drink, and we've all been shaped by this idea of power over. And
Mhm.
when we look at some of the things that are happening, even the threats on women's reproductive rights, the gender pay gaps, when we look at a lot of the devastating things that are happening, how the UN released a report back in June of 2023 that showed 9 out of 10 people polled internationally showed a negativity bias against women.
Mhm.
So if you look that up, the UN
Wow.
report 2023, which showed that the top three common beliefs that were held by humanity at large were: men have a right to hit their wives, that women cannot be trusted with money, and
Mhm.
that women aren't good in business.
Mm.
This is the pulse on the underbelly of the consciousness and the psyche of our
When you
planet.
just, yeah, sorry to interrupt, but when you just said
Yeah,
that, my gut went pom pom pom, like it
yeah,
hurt so
right?
bad
It
because
hurts so bad.
I'm dealing, and we can go to another. I don't want to
Yeah.
interrupt you, but yes, I felt that in my body. Please
Yeah.
continue.
Right. Well, and that's it. We feel the heartbreak of it. We feel the devastation of it. We feel the fury of it. We feel the like it's inconceivable. So when you talk about the fear, like, yeah, it is terrifying. It's terrifying to have our reproductive rights,
Mm.
ripped away from us and have our
Mhm.
bodies, commodified or politicized. It's
Mhm.
it's terrified to speak truth to power and risk losing your job. The
Mhm.
Me Too movement wasn't that long ago. I was
Mhm.
sitting in a meeting on Wednesday with a few White House women that work in the White House and that worked in Hollywood, and them talking. And these are Wharton grads, these are
Mhm.
Harvard grads. These
Mhm.
are not to say I don't have an Ivy League education. I mean,
Mhm.
I actually left school when I was in eighth grade,
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
I went back.
Yeah.
But it's like these are educated women that
Mhm.
had to spend their careers fighting off men
Mhm.
wanting to have sex with them or
Mhm.
objectify them.
Mhm.
So the fear that has caused us to hold back, silence ourselves, turn into more acquiescent, people pleasing, or just pissed off, angry, armored up women
Mhm.
is real. And that's a lot of what we are up against. And it really is like I think of, and especially myself, I mean, I had a horrible trauma history. And then after an overdose that put me in a coma, I had a near-death experience, I almost died. And when I came out of the coma, I had this calling to go on a pilgrimage, and I spent years living this very mystical journey, traveling around the world, with a backpack as a 18-year-old girl, in the
Mhm.
1990s when there
Mhm.
were cell phones, and living from spiritual community to spiritual community.
Mhm.
And all of that to say, I'm very open and impressionable, and also took in a lot of ideals that said that, oh, I should be the presence of love, and I should be compassionate and forgiving and kind to everyone.
Mhm.
However, so to the point of what you're saying, we live in a culture that tends to corrupt or see that loving openness of the feminine expression as prey.
Mhm.
And I do feel that we are walking a delicate line. And yes, how to absolutely tenderly minister to ourselves and the parts of ourselves that are hurting with love and compassion, that is crucial. And also learning how to have a lot more discernment
Mhm.
with our interactions with the world, because there are people that are not. I mean, I still have this Pollyanna worldview where I still have this very naive part of me that wants to assume that everyone's doing their best, and that I can trust so and so. And I've just found it's not the case. So
Mhm.
learning how to protect ourselves from a place of strength
Mhm.
and have that discernment, and yes, compassion for all of it, but also to not let our kindness be viewed as a weakness, I
Mhm.
think is something that there's the shadow feminine, there's the shadow masculine, there's the empowered
Mhm.
masculine, there's the empowered feminine. And
Mhm.
so we are navigating some really tricky things. So the fear is, I think it's entirely appropriate based on what.
Yeah, the fear, yeah, the fear is real. And I think my oh, I felt it in my gut because that's been so, like for my personal journey, it's like the money thing and the business thing really, really got me. I'm, actually uh, the first one that you said, which is the people that were polled said it was okay for women to be hit or
Yeah.
abused.
Yeah.
And what's so crazy is I'm actually going through this cycle with my partner right now of, obviously I'm very safe physically, and mentally and emotionally. This is the best man I've ever met in my life. And there's still a part of me that I do not consciously control that we're working through, and I'm noticing a pullback.
Mhm.
And he, again, the safest man I've ever met in my life, the most amazing man I've ever met in my life. And there's still a part of me, whether that be, we could probably talk about, the generational trauma or things that I didn't know or things that maybe didn't happen to me and that have carried over. But that, and then the money, all the money healing I've been doing, like it just, ooh, you got me right there, girl. Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I really appreciate and love your wisdom in what you said of this part that you can't consciously control, because
Mhm.
I mean, I spent 10 years invested in mystical spiritual communities, ashrams, monasteries. I am an ordained minister. I have a very strong relationship with the spiritual component of life, and the
Mhm.
the my cultivating that relationship with my soul. I also hold a master's degree in psychology and have spent a lot of my life in the psychoanalysis, like
Mm-hmm.
trying to see the
Mm-hmm.
things,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
understanding the patterns and all of
Put them
that.
together. Mm-hmm.
And then the past 10 years I've spent in the fields of relational neuroscience. And I have such a deep appreciation now that the parts of the brain that contain with what you're talking about, the fears or the triggers or the reactivity or the whether it's inherited or something that we actually went through ourselves, it is very it doesn't that part of the brain doesn't speak English.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't have conscious awareness of it because it's
Mm-hmm.
in the subcortical brain,
Mm-hmm.
i.e., the subconscious, which
Mm-hmm.
means we can't see it. We
Mm-hmm.
feel it and we sense it, and it speaks the language of sensation and strong reaction or aversion or compulsion, but
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't speak English and it does not respond to us commanding ourselves through willpower to control, like
Mm-hmm.
calm down, you know better. It
Yeah.
doesn't work that way. And I
Mm-hmm.
feel like that's part of, the changing face, the changing landscape of how we even talk about how we heal and transform is
Absolutely.
that it is not a mentally governed process.
Mm.
And I mean, saying this coming out of a long history of psychoanalysis, it's like like that took me a bit to really
Mm.
reckon that we cannot rationalize or think our way through the healing transformative journey. There's something much
Totally.
greater inside to access.
Totally. Totally. Well, let's move to that then because like how, we've looked at this shortly, in the time that we have together, we've looked at this bigger picture of, balancing the scales and really healing a lot of the past, collective hurts that have happened. Um, if there's a woman or a man listening to this, how can they, a lot of times this was my biggest thing with everything in the world is I became apathetic and apathetic meant avoidance, right? But then I realized that avoidance actually means protection, right? And then I was able to discern and choose what kind of energies that I let in my life because of the way that they made me feel like whether that be scrolling or whether that be people or what have you. Um, but what is it that we can do on an individual level, like the inner work that we need to do in order to change collectively? Because I'm sure it's all based on um my partner and I have this conversation a lot because he there's a lot of the stuff out there like gets him really fired up and I just have to keep reminding myself like that my inner like compassion and discernment and then tenderness and love really has to come from me and I feel like that's really what changes the world and I can feel it like I feel it in my body right now as I'm talking about it like I'm getting the chills. So what
Mhm.
is it about the
Mhm.
inner work that we need to do? I mean, I'm going to say need and should
Um,
in order for this to happen.
yeah, and I mean I think it is a need because we're walking around in a culture that it's the unspoken epidemic of trauma,
Yeah.
whether we ourselves who are violated or
Hmm.
our parents or our grandparents
Hmm.
or just our culture at large has
Hmm.
really separated us from ourselves. And
Hmm.
so epigenetics is showing us that we carry 14 generations
Hmm.
of our ancestors' gene encoding. So if grandmother, lived through a famine, my genes are going to turn on and tell me to hoard food or
Hmm.
overeat
Hmm.
because of what grandmother went through. And 14 generations back is what epigenetics is showing us.
Wow.
And then when we look at the developing brain in how the baby's nervous system develops around mom's nervous system at 3 months in utero,
Hmm.
and the baby's brain is shaping around mom's brain shaped around
Hmm.
grandmother's brain shaped around great grandmother's brain. So we're seeing that neurobiologically, there's also these very real ways that we have been shaped by the women and men, but particularly women because we grow in the bodies of
Hmm.
women that have come before us. And so to me, like where the what do we, need to do, what should we do? I really am inspired to live at that intersection of where spirituality meets science.
Hmm.
Because to me, inside of me, God, and I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. So God, the universe, whatever we want to call it, but God created our bodies brilliantly. Like our bodies alone, it is a miracle that the biological functions that occur every day just allow us to be here are a
Mm-hmm.
miracle. And
Mm-hmm.
God created that. And
Mm-hmm.
God also gave us this brain that is extraordinarily capable of integrating, of healing, of really allowing us access to these higher human potential things
Mm-hmm.
that come from an integrated brain. And God also sort of laid down the roadmap as to how to help our brain heal through science, giving us access to science and through brain imaging and understanding our autonomic nervous system. Thank you, Dr. Stephen Porges, for
Mm-hmm.
polyvagal.
Mm-hmm.
And so to me, my theory is even how a lot of the spiritual traditions were created by men that were very sort of and again, I love men. I'm not about reverse chauvinism that women are better. However, this very mentally governed idea that we can pray ourselves away or that we can distance ourselves from or separate ourselves from our very basic human experience.
Mm-hmm.
We look at, Buddha, Muhammad, Jesus, like across the board, there are male figureheads at a lot of the bulk of the world's spiritual traditions.
Mm-hmm.
And modern psychology, 120 years ago, was founded by white men, for the most part, white men. And it also a lot of this inside of a patriarchal worldview. I mean, the Bible was created within this time, and I know that this can be activating for some. It's just my perspective that part of what we are reshaping is even the conversation about how we transform and grow, and what the purpose of triggers are. And in a lot of psychology, the goal is to minimize suffering by overcoming triggers. In a
Mm-hmm.
lot of spiritual movements, the goal is to minimize suffering by distancing ourselves, rising above our
Mm-hmm.
triggers.
Mm-hmm.
However, God gave us these phenomenal bodies that get really triggered when
Mm-hmm.
things happen that harken back to where we're carrying something unprocessed, unresolved, unintegrated inside of our brains. So, how do we do the work? We actually pay attention to that which is emerging, the rage, the hatred,
Mm-hmm.
the urge to binge eat or binge drink, the
Mm-hmm.
urge to numb out. We pay attention to the, oh my God, I want to like, break something, like all of those very human things that are hard to feel, the shame, the grief, the rage. I mean, no one likes I mean, I've been in this line of work 27 years professionally, and
Mm-hmm.
it's my life path. No one wants to hang out in the like grief and the rage and the shame. However, when we're able to meet these guests in our guest house, as Rumi has
Mm-hmm.
the beautiful poem, with respect and learn from them, then that actually guides us to sort of this incredible process that allows the brain and the psyche to integrate some of these hurts, these triggers into hidden strengths that actually are
Mm-hmm.
resources that we can turn towards.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the whole culture of like, think new thoughts, change the story you tell yourself. The whole culture that subtly is reinforcing shame and this idea that something's wrong with you. What's wrong with you? You need to forgive them. You need to let that go. What's
Mm-hmm.
wrong with you that you haven't let that go yet? That you've been in therapy for, 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
To me, the whole narrative around that because we're still upset,
Mm-hmm.
means that there's something wrong with us,
Mm-hmm.
is what's changing into how can I meet the pain and the hurt that is still arising in me with curiosity and kindness,
Mm-hmm.
and then let it guide me. Our bodies and our brains, and especially when we are working with somebody that can really guide us into this material, like you said, like we can't see it ourselves. We need
Mm-hmm.
guidance in this area.
Mm-hmm.
When we're able to like really follow the wisdom of our body that is showing up through where our triggers are, it often leads us to this incredible process of integration inside that allows us to genuinely be more loving,
Mm-hmm.
compassionate people.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's
that's
beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful. That I mean, it's so wild because and I agree, and I went through these re-traumatizing processes inside of myself. But what's so wild is the theme, we started at meta, but it turns into micro inside of ourselves
yes.
because the power over is
Yes.
what we are expecting, and because it's what we've been taught, because it's what we've been modeled, because it's what um some of the quote unquote experts and spiritual teachers say
A lot
is,
to
yeah, is to have power over these things instead of being with
control
and
them.
control. Yeah, which is an inherent, like, if a toxic masculinity, for example, if we want to throw in a buzzword, is that, that is one of the things, like too much control, too much um
Anything that's attempting
dominance.
to dominate. I mean,
Yeah.
to me, anything that's attempting to dominate
Yes.
because it's uncomfortable or it's considered as a nuisance or a
Mm-hmm.
burden, like
Mm-hmm.
that's where I think the conversation is changing
Mm-hmm.
instead of like turning towards that thing, that person we
Yes.
can't stand, that part of
Yes.
ourselves that we can't stand.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we're going to find our true power and strength and grow
Mm-hmm.
together.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah. Go ahead. No, go
well,
ahead.
and just with what you were saying, I think of the Vancouver Peace Summit that the Dalai Lama famously said, in 2007, he made a comment saying that a Western woman will change the world. And
Mm-hmm.
not to say that women everywhere are in, uniquely positioned to affect change. However, we in the West, we do have unique privileges. We have access to resources, to education, to civil liberties, to money. I've lived all over the world, and I really see that we do have access, and there's a responsibility in that.
Mm-hmm.
And where I have like developed the bulk of my work and focus is really looking at the three areas where Western women in particular, where we tend to lose our power the most:
Mm-hmm.
love and relationship,
Mm-hmm.
the beauty myth and body image,
Mm-hmm.
and money,
Money.
work, worth, purpose.
Mm-hmm.
These three areas, money, work, and purpose, beauty, the beauty myth, body image, and lack of self-care, self-neglect,
Mm-hmm.
and love and relationships. To me, these are the areas that we are being tasked to help regain our power. And I mean, I say it in a very, very sincere way because I'm a woman that has been raped repeatedly. So
Mm-hmm.
the love and relationship piece in terms of what it takes to build trust, having grown up with alcoholism in my family,
Mm-hmm.
as well as having undergone a phenomenal amount of sexual abuse. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I understand what it takes to actually bring healing into that part of the feminine in me that was very significantly violated.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also a woman that had severe eating disorders and was hospitalized with tubes up my nose, for anorexia and bulimia. So I deeply understand
Mm-hmm.
the ingrained conditioning around the beauty myth that has taught us to turn against ourselves and look at the multi-billion-dollar beauty industry that
Mm-hmm.
reinforces it.
Mm-hmm.
And I grew up in a family that didn't have any money. So started fending for myself when I was 14. I had my first job when I was 8, and really, felt a sense of disempowerment for the bulk of my young developing life over this feeling of like not having enough money. And
Mm-hmm.
now, at this phase in my life, my subspecialty is women that have been blessed with extraordinary wealth. They're either
Mm-hmm.
heiresses of multi-million, multi-billion dollar fortunes, or
Mm-hmm.
they've married into it. And the same feelings of not being in power, not having feeling empowered with the money, feeling undeserving of the money, feeling like they don't have a clue what to do with the money.
Mm-hmm.
Like it doesn't go away. I mean, I have had clients that are multi-billionairesses that
Mm-hmm.
will not spend $500
Mm-hmm.
on I'm just trying to think of something like something that they need for their healing because
Mm-hmm.
they
Mm-hmm.
feel like they don't deserve it, but they'll spend $50,000 on a Birkin bag.
Yep.
And so I just really, so my point in that is no matter, there were times when I had $26 in the bank and didn't know how I was going to like pay rent,
Mm-hmm.
whether we fall in that camp or we have a legacy fortune, that feeling as women of feeling like we don't have enough money and that our needs aren't going to be met and something horrible is going to happen to us and feeling disconnected from our sense of capacity to create wealth, create stability, create for ourselves. It's huge. So all of that to say those three areas to me are kind of the work that
Mm-hmm.
that's my lane,
Mm-hmm.
like helping women restore our power in
Yeah.
those three areas, because that from there, then we are more fully capable of standing strong in the power of love, not a
Mm-hmm.
reverse hierarchy, like I said, but not a
Mm-hmm.
power over, but really from the
Yes.
fierceness and the tenderness of
Mm-hmm.
love.
Mm-hmm. Or power with,
Yeah,
you know,
power with, yeah.
yeah. You're
Power
one of my
with,
favorite healers. Oh, you're just one of my favorites because you have you walk the talk, you have the conversations that need to be had. You help women go through the process. I'm sure that you've been through as well. So before we close up, tell me a little, and this could go on for hours, of course. There may need to be a part three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10. But
I think it's a lifelong engagement.
yeah. Um, tell us about the Extraordinary Woman. Tell us about your bespoke coaching business. Tell me like
Mm.
all these beautiful facets that you're helping women to step into and to love and love parts in themselves that they probably have never loved before, or like me, have pushed down, pushed aside, or ignored. Um, what is it that you're doing these days to help the
Mm.
world?
I'm doing so many things.
That's
Ongoing growth edge.
it. Let's
I would
go.
like, slow my roll.
Yeah.
But I just have a deep commitment and a deep love for helping women that have a vision of really making the world a better place, their world, whether it's in their home, their community, the global stage, a better place. I just really love helping them overcome the predictable obstacles that we all carry that stand between them and their ability to really bring forward the change that they want to see. And so to me, whether it's women that have an amazing idea that they want to bring to life, whether they're going to the next level in their influence or impact, whether they are really looking at, what is mine to do? I'm scared for the world that we're leaving to our children and grandchildren. Like, what is mine to do? I really am here as an ally, as an advocate, as a sister to walk with and link arms with those of us that are really looking at how can I, through the grace of God and the power that flows through me and these hands, these two hands that I've been given, how can I create a life of meaning, of purpose, of impact while taking care of myself along the way?
That's it.
So that is, that's the journey. And so I work with I work with women on year-long terms. Typically, I take 5 to 7 clients a year,
Hmm.
a year-long process, and I hold retreats for small groups of women, 6 or 7 women at a time. And there's a few things here and there, and I'm creating a cohort that will be launched next year to bring women through a female leadership, like the new emerging model for female leadership. And by the way, because so many women don't identify as leaders, but the reality is,
Oh yeah.
we're leading ourselves, we're leading our children, we're leading our
Mhm.
partners, we're leading, whatever, like we are leaders. So it's really
Absolutely.
reclaiming our God-given right as co-leaders and co-equals
Hmm.
as men. So those are some of the things that I have brewing
Hmm.
under the umbrella of Extraordinary Woman. But it really is like I'm like, we are all ordinary women. There are
Mm.
8 billion of us humans on the planet. And it is that when we choose to turn towards that extraordinary vision
Hmm.
within our hearts as ordinary women, that is how we become extraordinary. We
Hmm.
all have a vision of something that is greater than what we've known. We all
Hmm.
see a
Hmm.
possibility that has yet to be birthed yet. And to me, that's what makes us extraordinary is by really daring to nurture that vision. And that vision calls us forward. We become the woman
Hmm.
as we answer the call. We become the woman that has the courage, the confidence, and the ability to do extraordinary things. So
Yeah.
that's what I'm here
Mm.
for.
That's so juicy. I love it. And I also, yeah, my partner and I always talk about how we live such an extraordinary life, meaning that it's different, it's peaceful, it's calm, we're provided for, we have everything that we need, the love that we share, the healing that we do together, the consistent actions that we have, day in and day out, but it's for us and it's not
Mhm.
really for anyone else. And um that's what kind of came through me when you were talking about extraordinary woman is like the way that I've experienced is that when we live our gifts and who we are, that makes us extraordinary, right?
Yeah,
Because we're not doing it for anyone else. We're doing it
yeah,
for ourselves and our vision and the
mm,
purpose that we see, how it impacts the world and our children or, or what have you. So
yeah.
yeah.
And it's like it to me, what's really beautiful is that's contributing to the sum total of
Yes.
positive energy on the planet. And every major movement that's ever happened that's shifted the landscape of how we humans are, it's only had required 15% of the population
Mm.
a shift in
Well,
consciousness.
that's
So
good to know.
like, right? Like we only need
That's
15%
good
of
to
us.
know.
And so that it's almost like, yeah, you're doing it for yourselves. So you can do this for all of the women in your world. So you can do this to be part of the ripple effect.
Yeah,
Right? Like
that
we're
is.
all doing this. But I love what you said because it really is taking care of ourselves first so
Mm-hmm.
we can then take care of others. Like it doesn't stop at just taking care of ourselves. It's
Mm-hmm.
taking care of ourselves so we can
Mm-hmm. So we
be
can.
more loving, be more generous, be more kind,
Mm-hmm.
whatever the thing is that we're called
Mm-hmm.
here off.
Yes. Well, I love you and I love your
I
work.
love
Please tell all the listeners out there where they can find you, either on social or website or whatever's
you.
best.
GabriellaTaylor.com. I have a very intermittent relationship with social media, so you sometimes can find me there, sometimes not. It's not
Hmm.
been my primary vehicle, but GabriellaTaylor.com, and you can reach me and send me a note. I love hearing from people, so feel free to email me.
Yay, wonderful. I'll put that in the show notes and thank you once again for being here. You're an amazing light and I really appreciate you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Lily.
My pleasure.